I just read this thoughtful, fair and balanced, to steal a Fox News trope, article about President Obama's legacy on race on Yahoo News. And then what really distressed me were, as usual, the comments. Despite the fact that the author, Matt Bay, I think was his name, emphasized how our president had to be very careful about being perceived as a civil rights leader, so to speak, in that office, especially as our first African American president. The responses insisted on such ludicrous comments that President Obama was our most or first openly racist president. I mean, such ignorance. When you're talking about a country with presidents who were slave owners, to say something like this, it just proves the author's point about how careful our president has had to be about talking about race because of these, really racist people out there who can't acknowledge their racism and couch it in all sorts of, I don't know, just absurd terms. Another thing I noticed in relation to this was one of these commentators, and I just couldn't believe how many thumbs up were given to these comments. It just makes me think that the world is full, at least Yahoo News readers are dominated by these kind of, I don't know, ignorant racist sensibilities. It makes me, again, want to throw up my hands in the air or even get angry and confront these people. But, from past experience and also just general mindfulness, it's clear to me that people never respond to such direct confrontations with their own ignorance and racism, whatever the case might be. They'll react defensively and they'll just shut down. And no matter how rational one is being and calm in discussing these issues, people just can't listen. So it's pointless. All you're doing is beating your head up against the wall. And so, really, as I've suggested before, the only solution to this type of ignorance is to live a certain type of life, and to kind of, by example, show people a more noble approach to living. Not to say that I'm the one to do this or any such delusions or megalomania, but if you look at the great figures in history, like the spiritual figures, that they show by example how to live life, and it's never by directly confronting people with their ignorance, but by showing how to live. But anyway, what I was gonna say was one of these comments talked about how how his ancestors were Irish and enslaved. I don't know if that's really accurate, but this is something I thought about before. When you look at kind of the Fox News pundits, O'Reilly and Hannity, and or even like the Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, I think there's a disproportionate amount of political conservatives of Irish and Italian ancestry. And I think this makes perfect sense, actually, because Irish and Italian immigrants at the turn of the 20th century, they were looked down upon. I mean, not nearly to the extent that African Americans have been, because of a legacy of real slavery. But there's no doubt that these Irish and Italian Americans, these immigrants, did suffer from a kind of racism. Might not be the best word, but definitely prejudice. Now, the thing is, the parents of people like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and Antonin Scalia, they remember through their own parents' experiences how difficult their lives were, and so it's as if they think that, well, we made it through this type of bigotry, and we thrived and flourished, and so they're kicking out the ladder from anyone who wants to climb it behind them and saying, well, you should be able to do the same thing. What excuse do you have for specifically talking about African Americans, but also this would apply to Hispanics and whatnot, for not making it in our society when our parents were able to do this. Now, first of all, this ignores the very obvious difference in that you can't really tell by looking at a person their Irish or Italian ancestry, where you definitely can tell, maybe not definitely, with certain controversies in, I think, what was that? The woman who was really white, however you want to define race, and put herself off or passed herself off as African American as a chapter president of the NAACP. Anyway, without getting too far off topic, obviously there's questions about what constitutes race and whatnot. But the point is that, with African Americans, Black Americans, it is obvious, by and large, what their ancestry is. So that's a big difference. But, back to the main point, I think, that people whose own childhoods were shaped by, their parents telling them how difficult their grandparents had it, making it in this country, but they were able to do it and whatnot. They often end up having this kind of conservative political ideology that, everyone can make it. It is a fair playing field for everyone. When, it's so obvious that it's not. And back to linking this up with our president, I have great admiration for what he's done. In terms of how delicate the situation is when talking about race and navigating this. I can see the criticism from people like, Cornel West and Tavis Smiley, that he hasn't done enough. And I think there's truth behind that. But at the same time, the political realities of the situation are such that, I don't know how much more he could have really done. Like I said, these comments about how he's an openly racist president, it's just absurd. Like, how are you going to deal with people like that when their attitudes stem from these kind of childhood experiences, these deep sankharas that can't be confronted through reason or logic, that are just so ingrained. And the only way, like I said, to deal with this is not through even trying to confront these people through calm reason and whatnot. Have you ever seen how successful that is with someone like Bill O'Reilly when he's shouting? And it just doesn't work. That's not going to change. The only thing that can change, and it'll take a long time and patience, is, like I said, kind of living a certain kind of life, and having people just see for themselves. And maybe they'll never see, but hopefully their children will see that racism is a real problem. And that it's not something that just can be, dismissed as a legacy of the past. All right, I think that's it. Thanks.